Shut up and sit down.
Hey everybody, welcome to Scientific and Technical Communication. My name is Richard Ward. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 16, Resumes and Other Job Search Materials. Learning objectives for this particular module, they're going to be identify your personal assets as job applicant, search for a job systematically by planning, focusing, exploring, and networking, create an effective reverse chronological and functional resume, write an effective solicited or unsolicited application letter, submit appropriately formatted digital application materials, prepare an impressive dossier, portfolio, or e-portfolio, succeed in a job interview and write professional follow-up correspondence. Talking about the job search itself, it's important that you understand that you are going to be, this is an employer's market. You're going to be competing for a few openings, especially some of you coming out of your field. I often like to tell folks when you get out of college, as soon as you finished, whatever engineering program or field that you've chosen, it's always a good idea to cast a wider net than a smaller net. And the reason why is because you may be in an area like I live in here in Houghton, Michigan, where you are going to have a market flooded with engineers and some of the best engineers. So you're going to be competing against that. Sometimes it's good to cast that wide net. Some of my students have already talked about moving on to jobs in California, Kentucky, all over the place. And that's great. It's good to take those jobs and if you would like, continue applying for something that's a little bit more local in your area, your neck of the woods, and then, see how that works out for you. Better to try that later and take something that's already employing you. So just keep in mind, you're going to be competing for few job openings. And even when you cast that wider net, there are still going to be a ton of people you're up against. Whether you're applying for your first professional job or changing careers, you need to market your skills effectively. You're selling yourself. Basically, you are selling who you are as an employee. It's good to consider that when you're out there designing what you want for your resume to be. You want to stand out a little bit. You want to be a little different. At each stage of the application process, you have to stand out. Okay, you have to make yourself different or a little better. And there are several ways that you can do this. So assessing your skills and aptitudes, you want to begin your job search by assessing those qualities and skills you can actually offer a potential employer. And this can happen in your initial job hunt, especially when you're looking at potentially doing somewhat of a research process here, where you're trying to look into seeing what that job actually entails. So you got to ask yourself certain questions. Do I communicate well? And hopefully after this course, you might be able to communicate a little better. Am I also a good listener? There are a couple of different articles out there that you can read on things like rhetorical listening. Sometimes just sitting down and just listening with an open mind, paying attention to what is said, repeating it in your head, some of the important points that other person makes, not out loud so that it seems like you're mocking. But some of those things can help you to retain that a little bit easier. Do I work well in groups and with people from different backgrounds? This is important, especially in today's environment, in today's workforce. You will find yourself, I promise you, leaving college and going to work, and you will definitely be in groups. You will be broken into group work all the time. Some of the things that Michigan Tech has been told about in the past, before we instituted this technical communication program, was that we had put out all of these great engineers. They were just absolutely amazing, but then that so few of them were able to communicate, either in an inner office or within their field or outside of that. Not only that, but they wanted more and more people to understand that when they left, that they would be communicating in groups, that they would be working in groups more often. A couple of people that I talked to that used to attend Michigan Tech said that they wished that they would have had more emphasis on group work. I know that's weird to say. I hate group work myself, but it is something that we do these days. So that considered, you're also going to be working with people you might not necessarily like. So consider that. Consider cultural differences. Consider ideological differences. These things will come into play, but it's not necessary to let them interfere with your work. Okay. You need to identify those out of the gate. Identify not only the biases within whatever data or research you're pursuing, but the biases that you might have personally with the people working with you. If you are unable to commit to any of that stuff, you may have to rethink your career path. Do I have experience or aptitude for a leadership role? There will be times you're going to be designated as a leader, okay? And it could just solely be based on the fact that you have more knowledge within a given field or a given specific area of that field. So you need to ask yourself if you have those qualities. Can I solve problems and get things done? Am I a problem solver? Think about things that you've done in the past. How have you reacted to difficulties, especially when you're thinking about, can I perform well under pressure? Have you been to a point where you've sat down, you've taken a second, you've taken a deep breath, thought about what to say, and then approached it professionally? Or did you go ham and flip over a desk? These are some things you need to consider also. And it often helps to think about these things, especially when you are considering potential information that you may want to go and include within your cover letter that we'll get to a little later. You also want to know, can I work independently or with minimal supervision? Pretty much gone are the days of micromanagement where you have someone sitting on top of you constantly. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist out there. It is still there. But people are looking for those who can be go-getters, those who can go out and take initiative and do what needs done without being told constantly. And you'll find that when you do your job well before anything is ever asked of you, people tend to be a little bit more hands-off with their managerial skills. And that's just the nature of the beast. So it might help to show that little bit of initiative. Don't go out and make, catastrophic or life-changing or really big decisions that concern that company without supervision, without asking or running it by a manager, supervisor, whatever. Make sure you get some feedback on that before that happens. But if it's something minor, or if it's something that you feel like you might get applauded for, maybe take the initiative. Use your best judgment when it comes to that. Do I have any special skills? Public speaking, working with people, computer or other technical skills. Technical communication is a skill. Whether you like to think it is or not, it is an absolute skill. And eyes often perk up when they see that skill. Many companies out there today actually will go out and employ technical communicators specifically for their departments or for their companies. If they can get a 2-for-1 with you being an engineer or whatever field you might be in, that and the technical communication aspect, it's a win-win for them. So it always brings something more to the table for them. Things like public speaking, things that you've taken in college or even high school that you swore you would never need again, that you may have half-assed a public speaking class because you knew for a fact you'd be in the basement of some company drawing schematics or designing some kind of new, better lawnmower blade or whatever. You thought you'd be there, and then suddenly that lawnmower company comes down and asks you to speak in front of a group of investors. well, that public speaking class all of a sudden has a little bit more importance than you thought. So consider these things, consider potential classes that you took within your college or high school that may come back and reflect these. Do I have any hobbies that could improve my job prospects? Absolutely. Hobbies are a really good thing to think about when you're considering these things. Uh, while I teach technical and scientific communication, I love to tinker and work on cars. I love to do things outdoors. I have tons of hobbies that may not necessarily be something where I'm going to be talking to a bunch of investors. However, that does translate over pretty well when you're talking about conceptually designing a procedural manual or some sort of instruction manual, anything that could be used uh, to create. Ultimately, one of the best things to have when you design those certain things is the experience of operating it. So if you've had that experience through a hobby, if you are a drone pilot, those kinds of things really can come in handy whenever you're uh, looking at potentially designing something for the drone industry. Would I prefer to work at a large company or a small one, or at a for-profit or a nonprofit organization? These are things to consider as well. Larger companies are going to, you could become drowned out by the other voices. It may be a little more competitive. It's going to be a little bit more fast-paced often. These are things to consider. Some people love the challenge of that. And ultimately, a lot of times in those bigger companies come with bigger paychecks. Not necessarily the same for the smaller companies. The money's a bit more modest. Still good money, but it's typically a little bit more modest. But you typically get better, or you get some really good benefits included in smaller businesses. But it's often, in small towns with a slower pace, more lax kind of environment, and less pressure for deadline, less competition between employees, things of that nature. For profit, nonprofit, these are also going to determine ultimately the pay scale. What do you want to do? Ultimately, what do you hold in more esteem? I guess I could say ethics or profit, or morality or profit, or that even sounds a little bit callous. I don't even think I should say that. I think it should probably be more along the lines of what do you hold to be important for you and your potential family? I think that's better. Some people will throw caution to the wind and live on a much smaller profit or a much smaller paycheck with a nonprofit because they feel like what they're doing is for a greater good or what have you. But people tend to suffer in that more locally, like your family or whatever. Whereas those who go and work for a profit company typically profit more and often afford to provide a better lifestyle for their family. So consider those things. Those are some big decisions, and I glazed over that stuff. I recommend that you go in and do some research into that yourself, and specifically read Chapter 16 of this module. Do I like to travel, or would I prefer working in a single location? A lot of folks that I've met up here in the Upper Peninsula are plenty happy with staying here for the rest of their lives, especially out of college. They want to just stay here, and that can be a problem. Like I said, this market gets awfully flooded with the engineers, really, really great engineers. Michigan Tech puts out some of the best engineers you're going to find. Unfortunately, around the Upper Peninsula, because people get those local, pay the local tuition, it's often cheaper for them to come not that much cheaper. Don't get me wrong. Tech is an expensive school, but and it usually behooves them to go to it. But then when they finish school, a lot of them don't like to leave, and suddenly you have a flooded market throughout the entire Upper Peninsula of people who are just not willing to leave with a great engineering degree, and I see them end up working at Walmart, or excuse me, one of the big box stores, or something like that. And that seems like a waste to me. It would probably not be a bad idea to cast that wide net, take a job outside, and then keep applying for the inside until it happens. That way, at least you can establish yourself elsewhere. That said, some people just aren't going to take that advice, and I wish you the best. Some people get snatched up around their local community right out of college, but it is rare. So considering the idea for travel, you also tend to broaden our horizon, not just the social horizon. I know I could get on a soapbox here and talk about, oh, we can all love each other better if you just get out. It's not really just about that. It's also about innovative horizon. You can get out and you can see what other people in other areas, in other places, and other countries are working on. You know, commit that to memory, store it away for your own personal use, and make use of it when you get back. So researching the job market, you want to make sure that you're searching within a reasonable range, focusing on fields that interest you the most and fit you best. And sometimes those things might conflict a bit. Just because you are super interested in it doesn't necessarily mean it might be the best fit for you. And then on the other hand, those that you might best fit might not interest you. And that happens all the time. The important thing to remember is to try to strike a balance. Try to find something that you fit and that you have an interest in. If you can do that, you stand to be a little bit more successful in the career field. And there's no written law that says you got to stay with whoever you go to for the rest of your life, or you're going to be in some kind of trouble. Don't worry about that. Too many people are so worried coming out of college or out of high school. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Listen, I'm 43 years old. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Okay, don't give in to that pressure. Don't listen to that pressure. That's a social pressure you don't need. Who cares? You spend 10 years at a job that you liked for 8 years, and 2 years you just got by because you got tired of it or whatever. Go find something different. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Plan your strategy. The job search can be intimidating, so don't just dive into the search. You need to proceed step by step in a logical way. You want to focus your search. Learn about the industry that interests you through your research and joining professional groups, identify key companies. So Facebook offers great, great areas to go and explore that you might be able to go and find. Go get into some of those groups. Go look into some of those groups. Some of you are aerospace engineers. There are SpaceX groups. There are aerospace engineer groups. There are all these different groups. Reddit is another really good place to go and check out. Check these places out. It will help you. Not only will it help you learn more about what's going to be expected, it's also going to help you see or plan things that might be a little bit more unseen in the future. They can tell you about things that they didn't know, coming into this. Another thing too is it could be a really great place for you to network. This it is not unheard of for people to get job offers through LinkedIn or Facebook groups because of a demonstration of the perseverance that they have within a field of study or within a subject, and the capabilities that they have that they've demonstrated within that. So it's very possible that not only could you take away valuable information, but there is a potential chance of landing something there as well. Explore those online resources. I mean, you have nationwide job portals, online newspaper ads, professional organization postings, job openings at individual companies. Your schools tend to have a long list, like with Michigan Tech, we have Handshake that will help you look for jobs where employers go and post, what they need, things like that. Be careful with some of your online job search companies like Indeed, things like that. They can be useful tools. They can be some decent resources. Unfortunately, thanks to spamming and certain FCC regulations that we won't get into, you have an issue now with people getting your information and no end in sight to crappy emails that lead to absolutely nothing. Stuffing envelopes for $4,000 a week. Give me a break. Um, so be careful using those kinds of resources. Other than that, I would suggest some of the better ones are still going to be like, the newspapers, the old tried and trues. But then don't lift your nose at, you know, something like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Reddit. These are great resources to go in and start some big conversations into the feud. Okay. Learn to network. And that's, again, that social networking helps with doing that as well. But human contact is also really good. You want to make sure that you talk to career counselors, recruiters, friends, families, and acquaintances. Set up informational interviews at companies that interest you. If your mom or your dad works at a certain company and they have a couple of connections, see if they can get you in to just talk to some people about what the daily life is like, especially if you're thinking about a field that's not precisely what they do. Sure, mom and dad can chime in all day long about specific engineering traits that they have in their department, but what happens if you go to another department that interests you more? Network online using emails and social media sites like LinkedIn and other professional networking sites. While Facebook is not considered a professional networking site, and listen, I am not a champion of Facebook. I just, we're not going to get on a soapbox about Facebook either. However, I'm going to say they do attract attention, and they are useful tools. And also make sure that you understand as well that when you go out and you're building your professional persona, go and set your Facebook and Twitter things to private. Unless you are in a specific group or whatever, don't give away a lot of your information. There's nothing worse. Well, there are things worse, but it can be pretty bad when you're applying to some job that you really want, and then you have an interviewer go and Google search you, your Facebook comes up, and there you are, playing beer pong on a Facebook photo. Just be careful, okay? People are losing jobs left and right, not to mention not getting them, left and right over what is being seen in social media. So, with that said, market to private. So resumes, these are basically a laundry list of who you are. Essentially, it's the applicant's advertisement for employment. This is how you are selling yourself. It's going to give an employer an instant overview of who you are, your skills, your experience, your potential, all that. Employers are impressed by resumes that look good, read easily, appear honest, and provide only the relevant information an employer needs. Nothing extra. That said, it's often great to tailor a resume specifically to each job. There's nothing wrong with going to a career fair or what have you and just having a small stack of generic resumes that you can then go and just hand out to whoever you see that may interest you. Nothing wrong with that. However, when you are seriously in the job search process and you are sitting at home, I highly recommend you tailor each and every resume to a specific job. Resumes that are mechanically flawed, cluttered, sketchy, hard to follow, or seemingly dishonest don't even get a second look. If people look at your resume and all of a sudden they just don't like your formatting, you won't get a second look. And that's the fact of it. Make sure that it's clean, professional. You make good use of white space. It's not overcrowded. Make sure that you are honest on there. Don't take that job that you had at the restaurant where you were sweeping floors and title it tile manager or however you want to say that. Make sure that you're being honest and open about your responsibilities and the things that you've done. Don't include a desired salary. These are things that you're going to talk about when you see them face to face. Don't put benefits. Don't put time off in your resume. Now, this is all commonsensical stuff. These are things that you have learned culturally not to do. And I would say keep up with it, because we all look for that cultural uniformity throughout the whole process. Omit photographs, avoid them. You don't want to have anything on there that's going to potentially ostracize you or you don't want to give any kind of ammunition for discrimination, as well as information that's illegal for companies to request, such as your race, age, marital status, or anything like that. Do include contact information. Nothing worse than putting out a resume when no one knows how to contact you. Provide it on that resume. Okay, I know you're going to have contact information on your cover letter. I know you're going to have contact information through the email through which you sent it. I know all of this, but resumes get printed often. And when people print those resumes, if it gets left on a desk, well, they may forget who you are. So make sure that you are providing a current and accurate phone number and email address. Make sure it's a professional email address. If you've got an email address with a university, great. If you've got another professional email address, great. Do not have email addresses like smackbot99@gmail.com. Please do not email that person if you see this video. That was just a reference. But that said, try to keep it professional. Try to keep something, use your best judgment, okay? I mean, I think you know what I'm talking about here. You have a professional website, make sure you include that and the web address. And if you have anything that has to do with LinkedIn, that's another great thing that you can add on there. LinkedIn profile link, especially if you're talking about a digital resume. These can be great so that they can go within and follow you. And the great thing about LinkedIn is while a resume, like I said, is often going to be tailored to that specific company that you're trying to apply to, LinkedIn might offer a little bit more information into your employment background, other skills that you might have on there that you might have not made a connection to that they can find. There are a number of good reasons why you want to put a LinkedIn number on there. Career objective, spell out the kind of job you want and tailor it to each job you apply for, okay? Avoid vague statements and be specific about your immediate and long-range goals. This is what I was talking about. Often I will see, and listen, there's nothing wrong with the summary, and I know that you're going to hear from different people, like career services and different companies that may say a summary is fine. And it is. However, I think objectives push it over the threshold a little bit because you can be specific with a company. You can look at that company and say something like, to perform customer relations for a hospitality chain, leading to management with Hilton or whatever company that you might be applying to. Buzzwords, name dropping, all that good stuff only works to help you. Education, begin with your most recent schooling and work backward. Include the name of the school, degree completed, year completed, and your major and minor. These are both important because, again, people who see majors and minors can often make leaps and kind of connections that you might not have noticed before. If your class rank on a GPA is favorable, include it. I know companies like Ford, certain places like that do require you to, especially right out of university, they want you to include your GPA. If it's required and you've gone through their, if you've gone through their list of resume demands and they want you to include that GPA, do so. If they don't require it and your GPA ain't as shiny as you would like it, don't include it, okay? Don't put your high school down there unless you think it's relevant. There's really no need for it. Work experience, you want to start with the most recent job and work your way backward. Include employers' names and dates of employment and describe your exact duties for each job, indicating promotions and using active voice, okay? Try to stay away from the passive voice, which tends to be quite longer. Active voice gives you more room in the document. Personal data and interests. List any awards, skills, activities, interests, and memberships that are relevant to the given position. Awards, are something typically good to note. People tend to, anyone who's been awarded for effort, it's definitely a sell. References, list 3 to 5 people who have agreed. Okay, don't just start sticking people on there. I've been guilty of that, just putting people down there. Uh, Give them a heads up, or get their permission. Put them on there. You can write references upon available upon request. Now, here's the thing: a lot of you folks are coming out. Uh, you are going to have some thick resumes with internships, great jobs, all kinds of stuff, awards, what have you. If you start to see a lot of overcrowding, you absolutely are not going to have room for a references list. Instead, just put references available upon request at the bottom of that resume, okay? No need to put it on there immediately unless the company requires it. Portfolios, these are very important within a professional career. They're going to illustrate your skills, experience in areas that generate actual documents or visual designs. Assemble a portfolio showing samples of your work. Listen, I know you think that this is something that photographers do, and it is, but engineers do it too, okay? They have portfolios that exemplify whatever work they may have done, the accomplishments that they have, projects that they've worked on that they're proud of. All of these things go towards selling you. So make sure that you are providing this information. Again, you can say available upon request, but when you go to things like career fairs or what have you, it's good to have a little folder that you can just hand to somebody and have them peruse, and then they can, give you feedback on it then and there. So using templates, okay? Most word processing programs like Microsoft Word, for instance, provide templates that can be used as a basis for your resume. The key word here is basis. Remember when we talked about you want to stand out, okay? Monster.com and things like that, they also provide. The thing about a template is it's a cookie cutter, okay? It is a cookie cutter. You're going to be sending out an application or a resume to a company that is going to get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes. You don't want to look like everybody else. Change something about it. Make it uniquely yours. I don't care what it is. Don't go overboard. No rainbow colors. Don't empty the paint can, the paint trays, and put everything on there. Don't put a bunch of emojis and emoticons and all that stuff. Keep it professional, but make it different. Make it uniquely you. Templates and examples can help you get started, but you got to pay attention to key features that make your resume suitable for an audience and purpose, okay? If you're applying to the Ford Motor Company, maybe choose a color scheme of blues. Maybe if you're going to be applying to Verizon, maybe choose a scheme of reds with some cool little zigzag dividing markers or whatever. Listen, it's okay to be a little creative, just don't go overboard. You don't want to lose the professionalism. Organize your resume to convey the strongest impression of your qualifications, skills, and experiences, okay? And there are certain ways to do this. You have a reverse chronological resume, and this focuses on job experience and education and is best for applicants who have a fair amount of experience. Then there's the functional resume. These focus on skills over employment, okay? A lot of you folks coming out of Scott College haven't really worked in that field yet, unless you've done the internships or what have you. If you don't have a whole lot to fall back on, you need to focus on skills that you have. And it's best for applicants that have a limited experience, education, gaps in their work history, or frequent career changes, which honestly can be red flags. So here's the guidelines for writing and designing your resume. Make sure that you begin your resume well before your job, okay? You should have some sort of idea of what it's going to look like, the format that it's going to fall into, and all that good stuff before beginning. The problem with going and waiting and doing it as you go, often you may go in and make certain formatted changes within that document that don't follow throughout the rest of the document. And nothing is career suicide, or Nothing is going to jeopardize your potential employment quite like a non-uniform document that you're trying to use to get hired. Tailor your resume for each and every job search. Okay, unless you're going to something like a career fair, I recommend that you do this for every single job. Name drop if you can. Talk about where you, in your objective, maybe where you want to be in that company, those kinds of things. Try to limit the resume to a single page, but keep it uncluttered and tasteful. You're going to hear 1 to 1.5 to 2 pages. I strongly suggest you keep it to 1 page. And if it gets to a point where it starts getting really cluttered, start ejecting the least essential stuff, okay? Keep the most important things. Stick to experience relevant to the job. Oh, and sorry, to go back on that too, make sure that you have margins within the resume. Your employer or the interviewer is going to want somewhere where they can take notes or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to have a pad or paper or computer or whatever, but still, as a given, with a resume, we leave margins for note taking. So make sure that there's ample room for that. I mean, don't go overboard, about 1-inch margins. Stick to experience relevant to the job. Don't start bringing in your experience as a tile maintenance person. Use action verbs and keywords. Use active voice. Stay away from passive voice when all possible, and start and avoid first person pronoun if you can. Use action verbs and keywords. Use bold, italic, underlining, colors, fonts, bullets, and punctuation for emphasis, but do so professionally and don't overdo it, okay? Don't make a document that looks like it's written in hieroglyphics. Make sure that it's tasteful. Never invent or distort your credentials. Again, if you swept the floor, don't say you were tile maintenance, okay? Try not to over embellish, okay? Be honest, be clear, tell them what you did. They will check. And in many cases, especially today, they will check. And, you know, I'm not saying some of your other more minimum wage jobs wouldn't check or whatever, but it behooves a company that's going to be investing a ton of money into you to go and do this research. Take for granted that they are going to check. So don't embellish. Don't go crazy with the, you know, with the nomenclature and all that good stuff. Just keep it straight. You know, and if that job did not have a specific name or designation with that, when you went in there, get as close to it as you can. Okay. Use templates and examples to get yourself started, but don't rely on it for the end run. Okay. Make sure that that document becomes uniquely you. As a rule, do not include hyperlinks in your resume. Okay. The reason why is because if it's printed, people can't click on that. Don't include those hyperlinks if you can. Proofread, proofread, proofread. And the reason why, nothing will get you thrown into the discard pile quicker than misspellings, bad punctuation, anything that may look like you might not be able to run on par in a, you know, in this culturally hegemonic kind of like straight and narrow. You got to be able to be uniform. There are certain cultural principles within the resume that have to be uniform. And diction, sentence structure, all of these things are going to come in very important. When it comes to application letters, these are going to be things that complement that resume, that go alongside it. The letter's purpose is to explain how your credentials fit the particular job and to convey that you are informed, professional, and likable. Okay? Take your resume should directly reflect. There should be nothing new within that application letter. Okay? There should be no surprises. When they look on your resume, it should be there. But your cover letter is just an explanation of how that stuff might have come to be and how it pertains to the job to which you are applying. And it's not a bad idea to make it uniquely yours and maybe perhaps add a short, brief anecdote, something that may have gotten you into the field, something that may have turned you to it. These folks are going over these resumes. I like to think of them who they are these poor hermits sitting in a basement somewhere with no windows and very dim lighting, and all they want is an escape. That little anecdote could be the injection that gets you into a second look. Application letters may be solicited in response to a specific advertisement or unsolicited. Structure your letter as follows. You want an introduction. Name the job specifically and where you saw it advertised. Identify yourself and your background. That background area might be a great place for you to insert your anecdote. If you have a mutual connection with this company, make sure you name that person. Okay, it often helps to have somebody on the inside. Then you need your body. Spell out your case without merely repeating your resume. This isn't just about talking about don't just repeat it. Talk about how it was used. Relate your qualifications to the job. Okay, talk about those things that you might have listed within that resume and how you believe those things can then be translated to what you're going to be doing with them. And then conclusion, you want to make sure that you're restating your interest and request the action, an interview for the position, a follow-up phone call to discuss the job further or whatever. Don't just leave it on open, okay? Make sure that you are letting them know that you're doing this all so that you can get an interview, that you can get a minute to speak with them, to get their time, okay? And set it up in such a way as that you aren't begging. Please give me a call or something like that. Instead, go on there and be somewhat direct and say, I look forward to getting to receiving a call, or I look forward to an interview at your earliest convenience. These things, they come off as direct, they come off as motivation, and not necessarily going overboard with you just being some kind of a dirtbag. Okay. Structure your letter as follows. Introduction, you want to make sure that you open forcefully by establishing a connection with a mutual acquaintance, if you have one, or by making a strong statement or asking a persuasive question. An example would be, does your hotel chain have a place for a junior manager with a degree in hospitality management, a proven commitment to quality service, and customer relations experience that extends far beyond textbooks? If so, please consider my application for a position. Body, you want to make sure that you're relating qualifications to the type of job you would like that to obtain in that company. And then you would like to also, what you want to do is you want to mirror your resume in that and link it to how it's going to affect that job. And in conclusion, restate your interest and request action, request a meeting. Guidelines for application letters are as follows. Make sure that you develop an excellent prototype letter. You want one that's going to be a cookie cutter that you might be able to go in and just change a couple of words here and there. Okay. Customize each letter for a specific job and be thorough. Be thorough. Let me tell you, it can be ugly sending a freaking letter in to a company with another company's information on it. Okay. Instead, make sure that you get people to proofread it and make sure that you proofread it yourself as well. Use caution when adapting sample letters, like I just said. Create a dynamic tone with active voice and action verbs. You want to use good, positive action verbs, okay? Never be vague. Don't leave a statement out there that leaves any room for interpretation, okay? Be clear. Never exaggerate. Liars do get busted. Maybe not at your local McDonald's, maybe not at Taco Bell, Burger King, maybe not at the mall. You may not get busted there. You will get busted in a company that's investing money in you, okay? Convey some enthusiasm. And you can do that with the way that you come off with your tone. Enthusiasm can be shown through anecdote. It can also be shown through the way that you're going to address them in the conclusion. Make sure that you avoid flattery. No smoke blowing. Don't church anything up. All you're really doing is you're making what you do a good business decision for them. Okay, you want to make yourself a good business decision. You're not about going and fluffing anything up and making it bigger than it is. Okay, you need to go and be truthful, honest, and direct in who you are, and show them why you're a good business decision. If you can do that well, there's no room for flattery. Be concise. Don't get too long-winded. This is not going to be some abstract prose. This is to the point and who you are. Okay? Be concise, be direct, fluctuate between sentence structure. Don't make it all short sentences. Don't make it all simple sentences. Throw in some compound, complex sentences every now and then. It's about readability at that point. All right. Don't make the whole thing like that, but make it readable. It should be, it shouldn't. I'm not going to say it should be fun to read, because I cannot imagine sitting in a room all day reading at resumes is going to be fun. However, it shouldn't be miserable. Okay. Avoid being overly informal or overly stiff. Be careful if you use humor in these things. Never settle for your first draft or even a second or third draft. Get several eyes on it. Get other people to give you input, and make sure that that thing is crisp and clean and ready to go. Never send a photocopied letter. Okay? Always send the actual digital document or a printed document. Okay? Don't just scan and start sending. Digital versus print job application materials. So resumes and cover letters today are typically submitted as PDF and Word documents. They're uploaded to the online job application site for a particular organization, whoever that might be. If you looked on Handshake, Handshake does that quite a bit. And a lot of your universities out there, especially when I was applying to Michigan Tech, everything is online. They have their own little system database that you have to submit to. Social networking sites like LinkedIn or Monster or Indeed, these also allow you to upload your resumes. Be careful with those. Like I said, when you go and you put your resumes out there, especially now you've got a lot of these software can read the letters and things, read the digital letters. The problem with that is that now all of a sudden you've got your phone number and all that good stuff out there in the world, and people have that information at their fingertips, and it stinks. Printed resume is also important to have on hand, especially if you are going to a career fair, the unemployment office, to anywhere you might be going. It's also good to just keep one in your vehicle. If you happen to bump into somebody on the street, you've got it there to give. For some jobs, you may still be asked to mail them a copy, and that does happen still today. Follow the instructions of the job application site. So always, when you're doing your research, that should be one of the first things you go and do after finding out exactly what the job entails. Find out what they need in that application and give them what they ask for. Unless otherwise noted, use PDF, okay? Some will specifically state that they want it in a Word document, a DOC, DOCX, something like that. It's becoming more popular, believe it or not, where you're starting to see more and more people who want DOC over PDF. Each their own. I like PDF because it makes it a little bit, you can encrypt it a little better, and it makes it a little bit harder to plagiarize. Use a simple font. Don't be going in there and getting all kinds of crazy fonts. I know that a lot of you folks do web design, different things like that, computer work. You'll go out and you'll download different fonts. If you're going to use some strange font that is not uniform across many platforms, make sure that you embed those fonts within the PDF, okay? And there are ways to do that. There are online instructions on how to embed embed fonts into PDFs. Other than that, I would suggest going with the tried and true Calibri or Times New Roman, the standard font that comes up on the word processor, okay? You use templates carefully. Again, it's a great thing for a springboard. It's great to start out, but you don't want it to be the overall end product. You want to stand out. Use keywords. That's very important. You especially want to use specific keywords that might be mentioned by that company themselves. Use keywords because a lot of these could be going through a program that actually searches for buzzwords, and it will take you and put you into a pile before you even get to a human that can look it over. Okay, buzzwords are really nice. Buzzwords that may have something to do with specific jargon within that field. Okay, use keywords. Avoid personal information for job materials that are widely available to the public, and this is the stuff that you're going to see when it comes to things like Indeed, LinkedIn, Monster, all that good stuff. You want to kind of limit that a little bit, all right? Especially if it's on one of those sites. It's okay to have that stuff published without specifically contact information in it there. And then people can just respond to you via that program. Outside of that, I recommend being very careful when you're starting to post all of your private information out there on the public. Dossiers, portfolios, and e-portfolios. You may also want to provide a dossier portfolio or e-portfolio. Like dossier contains your credentials, college transcripts, recommendation letters, and other items that offer evidence of your achievements. Your college placement office will keep the dossier on file and send copies to employers if they're requested. You don't see that typically when you're going from university into the actual world, into the private corporate world. This is something that you typically see go from university to university. So those of you who may be thinking about going to graduate school or maybe working in education in some way, then you may see these kinds of things happen. Okay, usually these are dossiers are reserved for academic realms. Portfolios and e-portfolios contain your resume, uploaded or scanned examples of your work, anything else pertinent to your job search. You provide your employees with access to this information yourself. These can also be, I would recommend that you keep these on a file in your system, have it all run as potentially two separate documents, one for resume and then cover letter, or some way that you can keep it all together and then send it out, okay? Even if it has to be in a zip file. Always provide an introduction or mission statement. Collect relevant materials and include copies of dossier materials. Assemble your items, okay? Make sure that everything is in some type of order. Omit anything irrelevant, okay? Anything non-essential, just get rid of it, okay? It's just gonna bog the process down. Interviews and follow-up letters. All your preparation leads to the last stages of the hiring process, the interview, and writing follow-up letters. The interview's purpose is to confirm the employer's impressions of you from your application letter, resume, references, and dossier. The key to a good interview is to be prepared, okay? Go in calm, make sure you have slept well the night before, make sure you've eaten something, you know, don't be in there, you know, with a thunderstorm brewing in the guts. So make sure that you go in with your head on your shoulders, and follow-up letters either simply thank an interviewer for their time, or they can be used to accept or refuse a job offer. So careful preparation is going to be key when it comes to an interview. If you haven't already done so, learn all you can about that company. Research their website. Research things that might have been said about them from other places. Practice answering typical questions like, why does this specific job appeal to you? Or what are your short-term and long-term career goals? How might you find yourself reacting in a stressful situation? Give an example. You know, have these things prepared. Always tell the truth during an interview, and don't let there be any surprises. Don't bring up something new that you didn't mention either in your resume, cover letter, or that you weren't asked, okay? Facts are easy to verify, and exaggerated or untrue claims are very easy to spot. When it comes to the interview process as well, make sure that when you are prepared by dressing appropriately. You either want to be business or business casual typically, and choose your colors wisely. There are studies out there that say certain colors have different effects on the way that people perceive us. Reds, blues, all these things. Blue, kind of this idea of loyalty, whereas red, everybody knows the red power tie. It symbolizes the sense of power. So do a little bit of research into some ways that colors are effective, and choose your attire. The two types of follow-up letters are thank you letters and job acceptance or refusal letters. Thank you letters, send them, you want to send those within a day or two of the actual interview in a hard copy, and keep them brief. All right. Thank that interviewer for emphasis and interest in the position. Refer to some details from the interview and close with genuine enthusiasm. Keep in mind that 1 or 2 days after that interview, the mind might not quite be made up on whether or not they want to extend an offer to you. This might be the push. Okay. Keep that in mind. Acceptance or a refusal letter. When you're accepting, formally state as such and thank that interviewer. If you're refusing, be cordial, offer an explanation of why you are refusing that position, and open yourself up to potential possibilities in the future. Do not burn a bridge. A lot of these companies do a lot of internet-working and a lot of speaking with each other. The last thing you want to do is get on someone's bad side within a company, and suddenly you're going to have some talk going on about you behind your back. Some certain guidelines for interviews and follow-up letters. Confirm the interview's exact time and location. Make sure you know when and where. Drive to it if you can. Get to it. Make sure you know exactly where that place is so that you show up on time. It is unacceptable to show up and say, oh man, never been here before, or I didn't know there was construction going on. Unacceptable. You need to make sure that you can get there and get there in an amount of time that is going to be acceptable. Don't show up empty-handed. Make sure that you come prepared with information concerning yourself. This would be a great time to bring either your dossier or your portfolio for examples. And also go in with if none of that else, go in with a pen and a pad. Okay, take notes of your own. Don't worry about having all the answers. It's okay if you hit a point and don't know. Say you don't know. Now this is kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, saying I don't know, it shows you're not too proud to acknowledge that you don't know everything. On the other hand, if you are constantly saying I don't know in that interview, you're ill-prepared and it's going to be ugly. Okay? But that said, don't have all the answers. They don't expect you to have all the answers. That's why this process happens. They want to see if you can think on your feet in most cases. So it's all about an impression, more or less, than it is on whether or not you are the most knowledgeable human on earth. Okay? Avoid abrupt yes or no answers, as well as life stories. Anecdotes are okay. Going into your past where you may suddenly burst into tears, this isn't the time or the place. Don't answer questions by merely repeating the material on your resume. Okay? Offer up an expanded overview into what you were talking about. Remember to smile often and be friendly and attentive throughout. Okay? Don't let your eyes wander out the window. Don't look down at your shoes. Don't start scratching at the buffalo wing stain on your t-shirt that I've often got myself. Make sure that you are paying attention, you're listening rhetorically, you are open to what they are saying, okay? Never criticize a previous employer. Whoever you might have worked for, I don't care how bad they were, okay? If you have to explain a situation, that's one thing, to explain it. But don't sit there and badmouth them, because all that does is say, what would they say about us if we had to let them go, due to some kind of unforeseeable thing. Prepare to ask intelligent questions, not like, how much am I getting paid? This might not be the time for it yet. They may ask you what kind of wage you're looking for, and that's fine. That's one thing to say, but don't just start going and throwing that stuff out there. Ask intelligent questions about, what types of processes do you use for this specific fabrication? What's the procedure or guidelines that you have typically for this? Or at Michigan Tech, we typically went about going out and creating these in this kind of way. What about you guys? Are you along that same level, or is there something different that I might need to know about? Think these questions out, okay? Even if you might know the answer to one or two of them, it's good to have a couple of questions anyway, because it shows that you are genuinely interested, that you really are there to participate, okay? Take a hint. When that interview is over, you need to understand when it's over. That can come from, okay, well, I see what we got here. That's your hint. That's when you need to start preparing yourself to go ahead and close it out. Don't sit there. Don't lay in there too long. Know when your time is up. Show some class. Exhibit polite behavior, even if something that you thought they said might have seemed particularly rude at a given moment. Be polite, be respectful, walk away, okay? Expect a possible telephone or video interview. That could happen. And do, please, if you're doing a video interview, wear pants in case you have to stand up to go and retrieve an example that you have to show someone, all right? And follow up as soon as possible. All right, review questions for this module are as follows. First, what are 3 questions that will help you assess your skills and aptitudes? 2, what are 4 ways to research the job market? 3, what is a resume and what are the parts of a resume? 4, what is the difference between a reverse chronological resume and a functional resume? 5, what is the purpose of an application letter and what are 2 types of application letters? 6, how are resumes and cover letters typically submitted today? 7, what is a dossier? 8, what is a portfolio or e-portfolio? 9, what is the key to being a successful interviewee? 10, what are the 2 types of follow-up letters? All right, and that's going to conclude everything for this chapter, for the section on resumes and cover letters. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment or post on the discussion board or email me. Other than that, I'd like to thank you for attending, and I will see you again when we start discussing our next module. Until then, have a great one.